welcome to our listeners and to you, of course, Francois, to
Thank
this inaugural podcast from Mercury International South Africa. So we're aiming to use this new platform that we're creating to broaden our reach to a lot of the listeners related to sales. We understand from the work that we do that there's a lot of topics in the world of sales that people would like to unpack and discuss and have robust conversations around. And not all of them have solutions, but certainly it's worth having a conversation on them. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I invited you.
Thank you.
If we could just start with a few introductions. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Sean Collins. I represent Mercury International in the role of senior consultant. In that role, I am required to engage with both our clients and also with internal stakeholders, designing solutions, working together with our partners, trying to overcome some of the common challenges related to sales and deliver for them growth and prosperity and getting their salespeople to become ever better. Can you introduce yourself?
Absolutely fantastic. Thank you for the opportunity, Sean. So I'm Francois Barnard. I work for Mercury International in South Africa. I've been here for a while, so I think just under 30 years. So I believe I'm entitled to an opinion. Not that the opinion is always right, but at least I feel I'm entitled to it. And I think it's important that we explore the topic from a sales perspective, because that's really what we are particularly good at, is exploring how these things work from a practical perspective for our customers.
Absolutely. So thank you for being here. Just for our listeners, myself and Francois, we've worked together for, what is it now, 10 years?
Yes.
So we have a good working relationship, and I think we have a lot of synergistic thinking. So I'm not anticipating a lot of debate and just more open-ended conversation, but he can be quite divisive if he wants to. So you're encouraged, if you have a difference of opinion, to please air that. Of course, what matters most is the topic. And I think from what we say and what we discuss, our listeners can come up with their own conclusions. Mm-hmm. Certainly, I'm not anticipating that we'll be able to come up with ideas and robust solutions for all the topics that we discuss. I think that would be quite presumptuous. But certainly, maybe in our conversations, we come up with some wisdom. I think that would be really good. Okay, so our topic for today, this one I feel is quite close to my heart, especially if I consider over the last 3 years the organizations we've been working with. The majority of them have been from technical, industrial, manufacturing type environments. So these are environments that have a large technical component to what they offer to their customers and what they do. Mm-hmm. For many of them, they define what they do as a technical expertise or a technical element of their business. So many of them will prioritize the operational side of their business, etc. And of course, in that business, they are still required to generate revenue. And that means they have to go out and find clients, and they have to find buyers for their products and for their services. And to do this, they are having to hire salespeople. And as you and I know, salespeople is a very specific role. Mm-hmm. It's one that requires a specific set of skills, a specific set of criteria for it to be successful. And invariably, when you're in a technical environment, you don't have those skills just lying around, and they don't inherently come as part of the normal job specification. So what's been a common thread, a common theme among the conversations we've been having with our partners is they're hiring this unique hybrid role called a sales engineer. And of course, the various companies define the role differently, but in essence, it's people with a highly technical and engineering background that are now asked to go and source new business, hunt for new business, and manage relationships with customers, etc. And so, what I was hoping to discuss today is this role of sales engineer and what it looks like and what it means, and also why has it become such a challenging role to master. And I suppose a good place to start would be to contextualize what this role means. So in a lot of the companies we've been working with, you can differentiate between those companies that sell products and services related to operational budgets and those that sell capital equipment. So if we use the capital equipment example, these are individuals that are typically qualified engineers. They get brought in and or hired or promoted into these sales roles. And part of the role for many of these organizations is you still have to play a prominent role in the design and the execution of these highly technical engineering projects. At the same time, also going out and sourcing the business and doing the sales work, following the sales process, putting together proposals and negotiating deals, etc. So it's this sort of hybrid role that is expected of them.
Yeah. And sort of, I think that's the difficulty that so many of our clients have, that their customers dictate the buying process.
Yes.
And we know that buyers spend a lot of time offline doing their own research. I mean, the time that buyers give to salespeople, let's call them salespeople, sales engineers, has reduced substantially. I think it's about down to 17%, something like that. So the time that you have, it's scary. The time that you have and that buyers or whoever's involved in the procurement process, that time is very short. So you have to be extremely impactful. So people feel that because these are technical buyers on the procurement side and the buyers are very well informed, your person doing the selling has to understand the product.
Yes.
They have to understand it very well.
Which makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. Okay, so you get somebody who has an engineering qualification. But of course, the difficulty is, how do I convert this, call it convert. Okay, it sounds like there's something wrong with it. How do I get them to become a good sales engineer?
Yeah.
The challenge lies that when you look at it, new sales hires in engineering, okay, the stats indicate about 90% of them don't make it in the first year.
Sure.
Okay.
Is it that high?
It's that high. In fact, if you look at 18 to 24 months, there are no real fundamental stats, so it's a little bit related to what people put out and a little bit about what opinion formulators
of course,
say.
like most stats.
Yeah, like most stats. Yeah. They say that lasting 18 to 24 months is only 5 to 15% of people who move into the career of sales engineer will make it. So now the strategy of the companies, of our customers, is to, okay, we've got to get new customers. We have to sell more to the existing customers, get a bigger share of the wallet. So what do? We employ the people who will match the desires of the customer to have a conversation with them related to stuff that's technical in nature. Okay. The difficulty is that gives you the background of what is required from the sales engineer. However, when they apply it, very little of it relates to the engineering conversation.
Yes, that's so true.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting what you say. So if the bar to success is so high in this vocation, why is it that companies persist with these hybrid profiles? And why I ask that question, is there not merit in saying, okay, so evidently this hybrid role is difficult to master. So why not focus on just having salespeople and splitting the roles and saying all the technical components of what we do can be handled by a dedicated engineer. And we do something like joint selling. So we'll have the salesperson who will navigate the sales process and do the negotiations and the commercial aspects. And then they joint sell with an engineer. Why not do something like that?
Now, that's fascinating that you say. We've seen that with companies, that they move almost like the waves. So there's this approach. We're going to appoint sales engineers, people with an engineering background that understand the product, and then they sell, and then it doesn't work. And then they move over. Say, okay, so now we got to get a salesperson who is a good old, let's call it a rep. Okay. Yeah. And we'll get the backup and support of the technical person. And then that doesn't work. And then we say, no, what really has to work is we have to get sales engineers. So it's this on and off. It's like a branch in PE. You open them, 2 years later you close them. And you open them, and 2 years you close them.
Yes.
Because of the difficulty of making it succeed. The fact is, when you use a technical person in sales, they do outsell the non-technical people. But it's difficult to get.
Yeah, so I can buy that. So And of course, then I imagine if that is a potential solution, comes with a cost implication, because now you're doubling your overheads, because now you're hiring 2 people to do one person's job. Well, okay, so maybe a good thing to unpack is, why is it so difficult? So of course I understand that there's different profiles. So the research will suggest that those that are successful in sales have a certain common profile. And it's not always the case, and it varies across industries. But for the most part, they're generally more social. They're generally more open to the relationship building elements of behavior and of personality profiles. Whereas engineers tend to be more conscientious. They tend to be more focused, more vocationally orientated, and more analytical. So these are almost on the spectrum different and opposing personality traits. So you can see almost at face value why this hybrid role almost doesn't fit, because you're requiring a person to have 2 opposing sets of criteria or characteristics that they have to apply in the field almost simultaneously and navigate between them.
Yeah. Sean, you're so right. So that's the one, the personality, the makeup, the DNA of the psyche of the person. That's the one thing. The other thing is, sales has certainly changed in the last 2 years. That customers don't want to talk to you about your product. They don't want to find out what are the features, what are the characteristics of your product, which by design is what the engineer, the technical person is really good at.
Absolutely.
Because they go and study.
Probably what they're inclined to want to do.
That's probably why they went and studied that.
Exactly. Because why else would you spend 5 years studying something if you can't tell people what you've learned?
Yes. So it's almost, the approach was almost, let me demo, let me tell you about it, let me tell you.
Yes.
And now that is getting less and less, reducing in importance, because more and more people are saying, what is the value that your product and your solution will bring to my company? So now it becomes a value argumentation around that which I do. How is that going to help your business? So now an engineer has to become an accountant. No, an engineer has to become an investment manager. So the vocabulary changes completely. And with that comes the difference in approach of not telling you what it does, but finding out where you want to go to, and jointly then work out an understanding of what the real issues are. There, the engineering background helps a lot, cause and effect. It's drilled into the
process driven.
They've got that mind, the map in their minds of this is how you resolve, which is fantastic. But then, by nature, they want to provide the solution, whereas the solution seller is the one that says, okay, so let's consider, what do you think? Let's consider, what do you think? So you help the buyer navigate the decisions, point out risks to him, show alternatives, and help with that journey. So that social interaction is again to what we referred to back earlier in the personality, whereas the engineer will be really good to either do the job, design it, or lecture it.
Yes.
But it's not necessarily so good at that interaction of let's journey it together with it. And I think that's what makes it really difficult for technical people to get into it and get that understanding. So a lot of them are open to the idea. Not a lot of them have huge ambition. I want to go and study. I'm going to do my technical studies. I'm going to get some experience because I want to become a salesperson. Okay. Very few of them have that ambition.
So that's a fascinating point that I just want to build on, because I came across a very interesting dichotomy. So it seems that the relationship between how people perceive the profession of engineering and the profession of sales differs very dramatically depending on where you are in the world. So this dichotomy is most evident in how it differs between those in America, for example, the USA, and those in South Africa. So it seems that in the USA, salespeople, by and large, and of course not all, but by and large, have a higher profile in the minds of people than those of engineering. And it seems the reason for that is because, and this was quite fascinating, just take a guess how many engineers in the United States there are in comparison to the population.
I don't know, 3%.
What's the ratio?
So you say overall engineers to the rest of the population?
Yeah, so what is the typical ratio?
I don't know, 1%, 0.5%.
It's a lot more than that.
Are you serious?
Yes. 1 in 10 people in America are from the STEM fields vocation. So that's anything to do with engineering or scientific study or anything like that. So going into those fields seems to be more common practice in America. So you have far more engineers per capita than, say, for example, here in South Africa. Now, the ratio in South Africa is actually quite poor for a number of reasons, which I don't think we need to dive into. But here, the ratio is 1 in every 3,100 people is an engineer.
Okay.
So here in South Africa, it's different to America. Here, if you're an engineer, your status and your job perception is a lot higher. And the salesperson is a lot more further down on the pecking order. And I wonder what influence that has when you now ask an engineer or a person who studied engineering to now take on this role of sales. So mentally, what happens in how they perceive the job and how they perceive their focus and the amount of effort that they put into the different aspects of it.
I think it influences it greatly. So if you consider, let's take a sales organization, an organization driven by sales, such as an insurance company. We know sales is a absolute line function.
Yes.
It's key to the whole organization. Their sales has got a very good regard. If you go to engineering companies, the design people, those are the important people. The ones that go and do the selling are less important because there's not a true perception of the value that they bring. And that often depends on who your CEO is. So if your CEO comes from an engineering background, then the engineers are really important. If it comes from a sales background or marketing background, that's very important. I think that's one of the first things one has to overcome, is to get a sales engineer to move into sales is the mindset. Because if you I've had some discussions with some sales engineers and say, can we put on your business card, sales rep? It's like, it's a red
flag. Hell no.
No way. I'm a design consultant or advisory engineer.
It always feels like a demotion to them.
It feels like a demotion. It just feels like a demotion. So there's no status to it. So there's a reluctance to move into it in terms of just the psyche of the person, which I think is a really important part that you have to cross that bridge. So the status, the acknowledgement of that role in the company is a starting point for organizations.
It's a good idea.
When you see a sales engineer walk in, is it, oh, look, there he is. He's a sales engineer. Or is it, no, he's just, he's going out to see some clients.
Yeah.
So what is the perception of it? I think that's a very big starting point to the success. And of course, then working with people to move from this engineering mindset to add to that the complexity of human interaction, where you don't provide the solutions, you help facilitate the understanding of the problems, the decision making, and you have to now involve a lot of people, because with your client, we know the decision making units. If you go into business B2B in solution selling, it used to be 5-6 people. Now it's gone up to 10, 15 people.
Yes.
So your skill to play a social network or work a social network has become a lot more important. And that's not necessarily something which the engineer has had formal training on.
Or I can imagine would be comfortable with, because if you think about why they probably got into engineering, and it seems to me to be the sort of field where I love what it entails. I love the idea of engineering. I love what it means and what it requires of me and all that sort of stuff. And if that's the reason I got into it, now you're asking me to do things that are totally unrelated to that which I've really wanted to do, there's going to be a resistance. Now, of course, you can have training, you can have coaching on equipping them to do that. But if the inclination or if the desire or if the belief is not in its value, how successful are you going to be in developing that?
Not very successful. Not very successful.
And that for me is a fundamental thing, because how do you change that? And it seems to me, if you don't at least cross that bridge to some extent, and maybe you'll never swing a technically minded engineering type person totally to the other side and say, okay, now sales is the new is the new preferred
route to go.
Yeah, but Even if you can just bridge the gap and sort of get them halfway, that says, it's a good thing to have these skills, and it's better for me, and I buy into the idea.
Sean, it's a little bit the same challenge that engineers have when they move into management, from management into leadership.
That's so true.
That it's this whole thing. I studied. I'm good at this. I've done it for years. This is my reputation. This is within the control of my head and my hands. And then when you move into management, that functional expertise becomes less and less relevant to what you're doing. And then you move into leadership and it becomes even less relevant. So there's where a lot of people say, am I ready in my career to go from engineering into management? Am I ready to go from management?
Probably not at the time.
And it's almost...
If they have to do it.
Yeah. If they want to progress. So you have the technical specialists, and they will remain technical specialists. And this is where the organization really has to think carefully. If I want to get somebody that goes from an engineering role into a sales role, is there a career path? Is there a remuneration path? Because often you entice the person to move into that, but you don't change the remuneration structure. You're not rewarded for planting seeds for stuff that in many cases are going to yield a return 3 to 5 years later. So that you have to nowadays not only get the project, but you have to manage the project, and you have to make certain it's sustained. So that will it moves away from a 6 months relationship into a 2, 3, 4, 5 years and longer relationship. And that's often not acknowledged by the company structure, and it's often not rewarded by the company structure. So then for a sales engineer, it's like, right, the deal is there, but I still have to work very hard to make sure, although I'm not primarily responsible for the implementation, it's still my reputation.
Yeah, of course.
And I have to play a role, but there's no acknowledgement. It's now go and get the next deal, go and get the next deal.
And let's be honest, most human beings wouldn't want to do such a significant change without the acknowledgement.
Absolutely. So there has to be a career path. There has to be a status to it. I say status, just an acknowledgement. It's an important role to the organization. And you have to change your remuneration structure for it, because we pay managers, generally, I'm generalizing, more than what we pay the people below. Why is that? Because there's a function that carries more responsibility. If you go to a sales organization, your top salespeople earn more than the CEO. But in an engineering organization, the top salesperson earns the same as an engineer.
Yes.
Yet the responsibilities is vastly different, and in many cases more important.
Absolutely. And so that lends itself to the suggestion that yes, so the perception of the appreciation of the role is the one issue. The other one is that it's properly rewarded and remunerated and appreciated by the organization as well. And which suggests that if you put those two things in place, maybe that will help significantly with the challenges that role is facing in this country. But I feel that it creates an additional challenge if you do get that right. Because what about filling that role from outside of your organization? So let's say now you need to hire a new sales engineer. Now you've got to go and find somebody that doesn't currently work within your business. How do you identify the right profile, the right talent, etc.? And surely that will come at an exceptional cost.
How do you do that? With great difficulty. So the starting point, I think, is to say, let's get clarity on what are the skills and behaviors we're looking for. Because you often have to hire somebody who does not have a track record in sales, but who is technically good. So they don't have it, but they have the desire or willingness to move into sales, which means you have to specify very strongly what are the personality characteristics that I'm looking for. So it is probably easier for an extrovert to make a success of it than what it will be for an introvert. Not that introverts can't make it, but it's just...
In general.
Yeah. So you try to get the profile of what am I looking for in the DNA, the makeup of the person, in addition to the technical expertise. So having a very clear description is very important. A huge number of the people who fail because there's ambiguity in the role. Because yes, you will assist with the design. Yes, you will assist with the implementation. But your primary thing is getting your business. But then when you look at what happens 6 months down the line, it's like, go and look for new business. You got 10% to hit that of your time to hit the target. The rest goes into design, and then you have to help with the support and the implementation and troubleshooting. So if the role is not clearly defined and the person is not protected, there's a very good probability it won't work. So it means if you want to get somebody in to do that, before you think of it, define the role very clearly. Draw the boundaries, put the barriers in place. So it's clear to the organization and to this person what you're supposed to do. Okay.
So that seems to me very reasonable. Of course, defining it is great, but how do you then match that definition and assess who's the best fit for that definition? Because if I'm hiring an engineer, to me it seems far simpler to hire an engineer than it is a salesperson, just by nature of what's required and how easy and or difficult it is to measure the different components of what makes a good engineer and what makes a good salesperson. A good engineer, you can measure their proclivity and or their proficiency in the job by their qualifications, their actual design, so the things they created or built or designed, and just by asking them simple questions related to their understanding about the fundamental principles of engineering. Whereas with salespeople, it's more it's the hidden stuff that's difficult to assess. So can this person influence? Can this person change the opinion of another? Can this person convince another person to do something that at the beginning they don't want to do? How do you measure that?
Okay, so it's a really good point. I think the important thing is just, as I said, start with clarity. What is it that you're looking for? So we spoke about social skills, the ability to, in a room, influence a couple of people. You can't ask somebody, are you able to do that? Because they often don't know. Okay. And if they don't know, they might not give you the answer.
Yes.
That is truthful.
Absolutely.
So if you've defined that, what you want, then assess the display of that in the situation, for argument's sake. You want somebody to be able to entertain clients or in a social environment, be sociable. Great. Make part of your recruitment process a social event where you invite them with some other people, and while they're having their dinner and they're having their steak and they're having their glass of wine, you are sitting there and assessing and observing. And you're participating and seeing how they're doing and see what they do after the second glass of wine. If that way inclined. How do they react to different personalities? That's a key element.
Yes.
And then, so you could use that. There's a mining group that what they do is they select 12 best candidates for the year and they put them on a leadership program. Part of their selection, after the technical aspects have been clarified, is a one day with the board. And that includes groups exercises, in field exercises, and social events.
With the board.
Yes. Sure. So that you get the opportunity to meet the board, and then based on that, they then decide who they want.
And how effective has that proven to be?
Extremely effective. Extremely effective. Peter Drucker said he's really good at recruitment. He was. He focused so strongly on it. He got it right at least 50% of the time. The fact is, if you make a wrong decision, the cost of lost revenue of a good sales engineer is millions. And then people do not invest enough time to make certain you get the right person, the right energy, the right makeup.
Or they just don't know what they're looking for, as you said, because they haven't defined it. Okay, so that to me makes a lot of sense. And now let's tackle a challenge. Use me as an example. So I'm now a recruitment agent and or HR manager for a manufacturing firm. And I'm now looking to hire a sales engineer. So now I've got my shortlisted candidates. And as you've suggested, I've gone through this process of observing them in social interactions, but also the normal interview process and maybe some psychometric testing and also checking their credentials and their engineering background, etc. And in the event where I find two candidates, one is very strong on the engineering side but struggled in the social interaction portion. The other was more effective in the social interaction portion, but the credentials on the engineering side are not as strong as the other candidate. Which one should I go for?
Okay, so it depends a little bit on the technicality, the requirement. So if you're looking for a nuclear scientist, to talk to a nuclear scientist, I would say the nuclear scientist is an important
One would
criteria.
imagine so. I don't know what they would be selling, but okay.
Yeah, neither do I. You want to buy a power station. But if you talk about engineering, let's talk mechanical engineering.
Yes.
Very few of those fields are so uniquely specialized. They're all specialized, okay, but there's an interrelationship. So there I would certainly say, what can I train? Can I train this person on the specifics of our technicality? Because remember, key in the sales role is uncovering the value and doing the value argumentation. So your commercial skills and your interaction skills are more important than your technical engineering. The calculation of the formula is important, but way more important is having that interaction and the ability to coordinate and influence a group of people. In that case, I would absolutely go for the personality. Absolutely go for the personality. But again, you can't make that as a blanket statement because it depends on the situation.
Absolutely.
It's always, can I train an engineer to be a salesperson? Can I train a salesperson to be an engineer? But
as a rule of thumb, it would be better to then prioritize candidates that have shown a greater level of aptitude on the social or sales characteristics side as opposed to the engineering side, just as a general rule of thumb.
Yes, and a really big part of that consideration is that people who are very technical, who move into it, okay, 90% in the first year are going to drop out.
Yep. But sure, to work off that as a just base understanding must be difficult.
It's not good betting odds, It's really bad betting odds. And that means you have to define up front, get clarity, what do I want? That the whole organization buys into it. That it's, as I mentioned, the boundaries are drawn. Get clarity.
Yes, and that people appreciate that this role is now of a high status. And
yes,
it's rewarded.
Absolutely. Then define the person and the personality. Then recruit for the person, the expertise in engineering, but also then, of course, very much for the personality. Do something like an assessment center. Okay. The experience shows, because relationship is very important. If you're going to recruit, you're an engineering manager or you're a commercial director and you want to recruit a salesperson, don't ask an agent to do all the interaction. You do those
that makes
interactions.
Sense.
Why? I want to hear what you sound like over the phone. I want to hear, like, if you said, I'm going to come back to you tomorrow, I'm not prompting you, did you come back tomorrow?
Yes.
Because if you don't do it with me, you're not going to do it with my customers. If we had an interaction, you write the email, say, thank you, that was such a good interaction. I loved what you said about this and this, and here is the information you require. It's the sort of characteristics I want to. So I want to walk this journey with you to get an understanding, what do you like? What is your characteristics?
So I buy the argumentation not to use an agent nearly as much, because you're trying to get that feel, that sense. But surely because of the complexity of what you're looking for, and that which we've described, which is this balance between the very difficult stuff to assess and observe and the easier stuff. Would it not make sense to use the expertise of maybe consultants or somebody or some firm that specializes in looking for that sort of stuff, and the ability to distinguish across multiple candidates which one's better at which?
I think, sorry, I clearly didn't convey that right. I think you have to use them, but you can't just use them. So it's good to do, in some cases, do some psychometric evaluation, predictive indexes of what the behavior is likely to be. I think there's great value in that. But don't rely on that.
Yes.
Use that as the basis. And because of the shortage of people, it's not like I have a short list of 400 people that want to
That's very true. So it's not like you've got a big pool to choose from.
You don't have a big pool. It's far more important to sort of say, I'm looking for the right DNA and the right mix. And not always do the consultants have the expertise to do that. So use them to do the rough screening, and maybe accept you're going to see some people that you're not going to hire.
Yes. Whether it's cultural fit or whatever the case may be. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that to me makes a lot of sense. So let's assume, let's sort of steelman this argument and say, assuming I can find the right person based on this methodology of recruitment, and assuming that I prioritize the role as we discussed, and I elevate the role in terms of status, but also in terms of remuneration, etc. So now I've got the right person with the right status, with the right fit. What happens when that person is not successful? What else could it be?
Okay, a million things. What seems to be an indication that reduces the odds of failure, increases the odds of success, is to say, I'm not going to just bring you on board and say, here's an induction of our half day with HR and a half day with your line manager, and this, you go on a 2-day product training thing. But to say, I'll put you on a path to develop you and focus very strong on the commercial, the interaction, the negotiation skills, the presentation skills, the body language, the EQ, those sort of aspects. And you have to be extremely deliberate. And it has to be a program, probably just map out the first 3 years of what it's going to be. Okay. But there has to be coaching. There has to be mentoring. I say it has to. You want to increase the odds. That's what you want to do.
Yes.
Okay. Because just the once-off training versus a path increases the probability of success by about 250%. It's huge. Yeah, it's phenomenal. So your chances of having success then becomes so much greater. And if the role is clearly understood that this person, a really good sales engineer, brings in millions. Okay, they bring in millions. Okay, in some industries, they bring in billions. But it's really important. So then you invest in that person's development.
And that to me seems logical. I mean, what is the alternative? The alternative is, okay, we go back to the market. And what is the likelihood I'm going to find somebody with such a good profile that ticks all the boxes with the same level of criteria? Again, based on what we've discussed, highly unlikely, which means if I do find somebody that is a good fit, even if they are initially unsuccessful, I have no choice but to invest. And to ensure that I do everything humanly possible to try and make this a success, because it's not like I can go back into this huge pool of other candidates and keep fishing.
Now, we've worked with a number of companies. So one company I'm thinking of, all right. So they recruit, they leave the person to go through an induction and that sort of stuff for 6 months to see how the person goes. Then they do a development center where they analyze the behaviors, the strengths, the weaknesses on an individual level. There's then feedback to the person. And then 2-3 years down to it, there's a leadership development program to help the person. There's a coach that helps that person. Okay. And still, because of the shortage of technical people, they still lose them. Yeah. One of our clients, they lost 10 welders last year, all gone to the UK at about double the salary. So it's difficult to keep those people. And if you don't invest in that, then just don't go for it. It's as simple as that. Look for an alternative. If you say, I have no option, then make it part of your investment is the recruitment process and the hand-holding, the training, the induction, the upskilling. Make it part of it, which means, but now it's a big investment. Yes, it is. But if it doesn't work, well, how much does it cost you?
Yep.
If it does work, how much does it make you? So it's not good to break eggs, but if you want an omelette, you have to break the eggs.
That to me makes commercial sense. Okay, so what if we have a situation where these ideal or balanced candidates are not part of the pool? So I need to hire a person right now. And the candidates I currently have available to me are opposite ends of the spectrum, but quite extremely so. So I don't have somebody that has elements of both at whatever levels. So by the conventional wisdom that we shared earlier, it would suggest I still have to prioritize those with the sales inclination. Now I've got somebody with very limited technical knowledge, but is sales oriented. Do I couple that person with somebody with more technical knowledge if they're struggling? Yes or no?
They're likely to struggle if it's a requirement, and then you have to find out what's the best solution. So it could be that you can get the salesperson to go out joint selling with a technical person, where the salesperson would be doing the social aspects of it, the questioning of it, the understanding of it, and when it gets to the technical person then starts playing a bigger role into the conversations. So that's the ideal, so that over a period of time, the salesperson will pick up the lingo and get to know the stuff. It's also very often the fact that once the salesperson is in there and has a relationship for a year or two, the questions become less technical. And there's an acceptance that there's a technical team backing it. But initially, in the first thing, you arrive there, and if you don't have technical expertise, go and talk to somebody else. Okay, so it's bridging that initial gap. And of course, you could also clarify what some companies do. They clarify, I'm here as the business integrator, but not the technical expert. So it's almost in an IT term, I'm the business analyst. I get an understanding, then I talk to the technical people, they design, and I play matchmaker.
So it's positioning yourself up front as that as a role.
Absolutely.
That makes sense.
Absolutely. Because if you don't, as a technical person, you'll feel so insecure, or as a salesperson, you'll feel so insecure if you lack the other part of it. So it's important to, again, that comes with training. How do I position myself? How do I introduce myself? That sort of stuff.
It seems more and more to me, from what we're describing, if you can afford it, and assuming that your structures are such that the organization has the capacity to do so, it might be better to have those dual roles than to have a singular role. If you consider what we were speaking about earlier, where you have these complex decision-making structures, especially when you're talking about deals that go into the millions and the billions, it means invariably in the sales process, you're going to have conversations with multiple levels. You're going to have people with conversations with a room of people that are totally technically orientated. And then you'll have the next meeting with those that are only commercially orientated. And then you'll have a meeting with a combined delegation. And sometimes you'll have a meeting with executive level stakeholders where it's a sort of mix and a hodgepodge of the commercial and the technical and also some high level strategic, which means in those sort of circumstances, it's better to have multiple disciplines represented from your side. People that are very highly qualified on the technical side and those that are very good on the sales side. That would serve your organization best.
Absolutely.
So if you have the capacity, rather go for the dual role than the singular role.
Yes. There, again, like everything, there's a risk around it. Where you have this hybrid person, there's the technical and the selling part of it. Invariably, you'll recall our experience with consulting engineers and those sort of people. The consulting engineer is the specialist. Let's call it a civil design engineer that designs bridges or mechanical or whatever. So that person is the expert. They do the sales job. People get a lot of confidence in their ability and their background. So I buy the company. Okay, I buy this consulting engineering firm or project management house that's going to do the job. But now I want that person to be there. So now they get drawn in, and that could be just part-time involvement or a little bit more involvement. But now I'm neglecting the sales part of it. Because the moment I become the product and the salesperson, the one day I have to be a salesperson, the next day I have to be the product. While I'm the product, I can't do the sales.
Yes.
So I hit my sales target, I don't have a sales target. I hit my sales target, I don't have a sales target. That becomes a real difficult act. And then often people get frustrated when they're in sales. But from an expense point of view, I didn't have design work last week. So you did the sales work. Now I have design work. I don't want to hire a designer. You can do the design, come and do that. But now you're not doing it. So it's having a balance of that. And of course, it's great to say I have a few people on the bench that I could just use, but who can afford to have a big bench of people? Yeah. So it's a big challenge.
I'm almost asking myself the question, who can afford not to have that big bench? Because that which you described is so true. And I imagine that it's a common challenge amongst most organizations that have this hybrid role. It's the balance between getting drawn into the jobs that are now sold and now need execution and going to find new jobs, which is a critical component required for growth. But again, it then lends itself to that dual role as the ideal solution, because if I have almost a team that hunt, where I have the technical elements of my team and then I have the sales and commercial side, then in the sales process, when I'm bringing on the new deals, then we do it together. And then when it comes to the execution, I can hand off a fair portion of that over to maybe the technical side of things. And then I can continue with trying to find new business.
Yep.
Where I have that luxury. Whereas if it's just me doing both roles, that will be increasingly more and more difficult.
Yes. So Sean, you'll know the technical people, invariably there's the sales perspective, and then there's the service, the maintenance. And often there's more income in the service, or more profit, I should say, in the spares and the servicing and etc. So something to consider is to say, how do I create my salespeople of the future? Is you find technical people that are there in a purely technical role, i.e. a service technician, a service engineer that goes out and maintains plants and looks after the shutdowns, etc. And you, over a period of time, make it clear that going forward in the company, part of the growth is to add the sales element and start giving them exposure and training into the sales field. With the clear understanding, you're not going to be there in 2 years or 3 years, but I'm multi-skilling you because while you're in maintenance, you have to interact. So listening skills, the ability to ask questions, to probe, that sort of stuff, to build confidence, to build trust. All of those things you can develop over a period of time. So 3, 4 years, 5 years down the line, when I need to expand, I need a sales engineer, I have somebody who's 70, 80% there.
And then it becomes like a promotion.
It becomes like a promotion. But again, then the role must be really important.
Yes. All ties in. That makes to me a lot of sense. Okay, so if more companies did that in a technical space, it sounds like it would be better for them. What other challenges do you think being a sales engineer might encounter?
I think the work-life balance is a really important one, because invariably it could, with a hybrid role, lead into longer hours. It could lead to a lot of frustration, because in a season I might be hitting a target, I might not. A big frustration and a demotivator is often my selling cycle could be 6 months, it could be 2 years, could be 3 years. So I'm working diligently, I'm putting stuff on the table, but because if you don't measure the sales activities, you'll just say, you've been here for 2 years, you haven't sold anything. I know. It's a 3-year sales process. So that could lead to frustration, and it could lead to frustration from the manager that then comes down to the sales engineer. So you have to measure that as well. You have to acknowledge the activities. You have to acknowledge the groundbreaking work people are doing to establish relationships with the aim of the long-term future.
So that's an interesting point. Okay. So if I had to summarize what we're saying, so yes, there's a huge challenge with finding the right people to fit the role of sales engineer. And it's not unique to South Africa, but it is particularly prevalent in South Africa. And what we're saying is, although there's no one size fits all, and there's no one fix that will fix all, possible ideas could include elevating the status of the role of a sales engineer so that it is perceived to be one that is sought after and one that is prioritized and people want to aspire to. It needs to be properly rewarded and remunerated so that the amount of effort and skill that goes into performing the role is justified.
Yeah.
And then in addition to that, one could consider if there is capacity in the organization or an inclination, maybe having dual roles where one, you have a technical component and a sales component, and they hunt in teams. But if it is a singular role, be sure to manage the work-life balance, because invariably, because of the nature of the role, it's very taxing. The sales cycles are long. And because invariably there'll be a lot of development involved, either on the sales skill side or on the engineering side, it'll be coupled with after-hours learning and a constant growth mindset, which can be taxing on individuals. So manage that as well. So you prevent burnout and you prevent people from leaving. Because ultimately, if you do find a person that's good for that role, that's good for your business, you probably want to hold on to them.
Absolutely.
For as long as possible.
Absolutely. Agree.
Okay. So thank you. I think that was a nice, robust conversation. Initially, I thought this would be a topic we wouldn't be able to find some solutions to, but it seems we got there quite easily because through experience, we realize there's merit to both elements. And there's merit to understanding that both elements have a good role to play. Yep. And if you can just balance those and marry those together, you can make sense of it.
Yeah, and what people can be certain about, it's a tough journey.
Yes.
It's a tough journey. And a good human capital department function is really important in support of that whole thing.
Yes. Yeah, sure. And understanding what they have to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
Sean, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.